Hey y'all, my name is Margaret and I'm an instructor at the Environmental Center. Today we're going to be talking about trees and their identification, because if you look behind me, if you don't know, if you're not really looking, everything looks the same. But guess what? It's not. So some of the things that you need in order to identify a tree, you need to be, number one, paying attention. So all these things really can look the same if you're not paying attention, and I hope that this video makes you change your mind about that. As you probably know, leaves are very important in identifying trees. But sometimes the leaves look the same, or it's winter and we don't have leaves. So how do you identify trees without the leaves? Other identifying characteristics of trees are their bark, also their bud, as well as their form, their shape, where they're growing, even where you find it on the landscape, if you find it up above in the canopy or down below in the understory. Also, even where it's growing. So if it's growing by water, if it's growing in a more sandy soil, those are all things that you want to pay attention to when you're identifying trees. Alright, so this is a sweet gum tree. Some of y'all might have this in your backyard. Its scientific name is liquid ambar styrosifila. And some things that are distinct about the sweet gum. You have all seen their fruits. They're those really spiky ball things that you see and that you might step on sometimes and that kind of hurt. And you can see that they have these little tiny openings right here. And so what happens is when this falls to the ground, it pops open this capsule right here and it releases hundreds of tiny little seeds into the ground. But that is their fruit. They also have this leaf that is palmately veined, which means it looks like this. It kind of looks like a maple, if you know what that looks like. But it has 5 points, 5 lobes, and that is very key in its identification. Also, it has, on some of the twigs, you will see what's called wings, and these are just pieces that are like barky, and they kind of look like wings on the bark. Yeah, so that's a very key identification feature. Not all trees have that. They also have what's called spur shoots. So it'll have these little things that come off of the twig. It kind of looks like a spur. Alright, so this is a black cherry, Prunus serotina. As you can see, it has very stripy bark that's almost silvery in some places. It's also very thin, which is characteristic for this tree. There are some black cherries that make it into the overstory, but generally you'll see it in the understory, as it is more shade tolerant than what it normally grows around. So what the understory means is that it is not reaching the top of the canopy of the forest. So if we looked up above us right now, there are a lot of pines that are getting all of that light that's coming through in this forested area. But this black cherry is underneath those, and so it is in the understory. Right, so the black cherry leaf is what some foresters say very leafy. It just kind of looks like a leaf, but it is serrated on the sides, and serrated means it has these margins right here that are sharp. So you can see that right there. It also, the leaf is very green, sort of waxy. And so that's how you can tell the black cherry leaf, just kind of leafy. All right, so this is one y'all might have in your backyards as well. It is called the yellow poplar or the tulip poplar, pretty often. And its scientific name is Liriodendron tulipifera. And it is actually in the magnolia family. So southern magnolia, everybody knows that one. This tree is also closely related to that tree, which is pretty interesting. And it's kind of hard to tell now because the buds here are bursting. But the reason, what makes them similar, is they have similar buds. They have these valvate buds, which means there are two scales that come together to form this bud, which is not, that's not what the oaks do. That's not what a lot of the trees that we have been talking about do. So it is interesting and of note. Also, something to know about the tulip poplar is that it is the state tree of Tennessee. So if we have anybody watching in Tennessee, here you go. This is your state tree. Its leaves are very distinct. Really, I mean, nothing else looks like this. This is just it right here. You've probably seen them also. They have very, very beautiful orange, yellow, and white flowers. So you've probably seen those around. So the bark of the yellow poplar is a light gray bark. And this one's a little young, but when they get older, they'll have deep ridges, and you can see those on the older trees. You can also tell with this one just how straight it's growing. It is growing super straight, and that is a characteristic of the tulip poplar. You can't miss it, even in the winter. You can tell it's a tulip poplar because it just grows so straight. All right, everybody, if you have been to Camp McDowell before, you have probably seen this tree. We have it all around camp. It is my favorite tree out of all of them, I think. Yeah, I'll make that statement. And it is called the Big Leaf Magnolia. And it is related to the southern magnolia, which I've talked about in this video already. And it is also different from the southern magnolia because this magnolia is deciduous, which means that in the winter, it loses its leaves. And if you know anything about the southern magnolia, you know that in the winter, it keeps its leaves. So it is an evergreen tree. But this magnolia is deciduous. And it has these amazing leaves that are really big. And it also has these beautiful white flowers that bloom. And I was just looking it up. It's actually the largest flowering native plant in North America. So it has the biggest leaf and the biggest flower, any native plant in North America, which is pretty awesome because it's right here in Alabama. So the buds on the big leaf magnolia, as you can see, they're very furry. They're almost velvet-like. And that also goes for the leaves on the backside. They are very velvet-like. And that might go away a little bit just as the year progresses. These are new leaves, obviously. So they just put these leaves on this spring, which is a lot of work for how big these leaves are. So thank you, tree. All right, this is the white oak, Quercus alba. and it has these super distinct leaves here. And oaks are really interesting because a lot of them look really similar. And there's so many kinds of oaks, they can be very hard to tell apart and tell what they are. So just gonna throw that out there. If you're working on your oak ID, don't be discouraged. Keep working. But the white oak is super distinct. So if you look at this leaf, it has these rounded lobes here with these sinuses. That's what we call those gaps right there. It's called a sinus. Makes sense. And other oaks will also have rounded lobes like these, but they can also have pointy lobes. So that's something to look out for. So the white oak is going to have 5 to 7 lobes on its leaf, and this one does. So that's pretty cool. So the bark of the white oak is very distinct, and you can kind of see that it has this whitish gray tint to it. So that will stand out in the forest. You can see that from far away. Also, you look at this bark right here, it doesn't look very shaggy, but as you move up the tree, you can tell that the bark on the branches is really shaggy. It's got these white flaky parts that are peeling off, and that is very white oak. So this is the Loblolly Pine. If you have been to the McDowell Environmental Center, you might have heard some instructors talk about this baby right here. It has a very puzzle piece looking bark. And the Loblolly pine tree is very common in Alabama. So if you are driving on the interstate, this is one of the pines that you will see on the side of the road. And it is actually endemic to Alabama. And some of the things that characterize the Loblolly pine are obviously its bark here. Also, the needles. So they have needles of 3. You can see that right there. That are 6 to 8 inches long. So that is about the size in between your palm and your index finger. So they have very medium-sized cones. They're going to be in between 3 to 5 inches or so. And they have these really sharp spikes. And this one right here is just opening up. So you can see this right here is the seed, that former seed. And their seeds have these wings on them. And that is what this is. This is the wing, and then the seed is attached at the bottom. So the Loblolly pine is very commonly used in the pulp and paper industry. So this is one of the trees that we use a lot for that. Also some timber, and you can tell it grows pretty straight, so that's good. Alright everybody, thanks for watching this tree identification video. It has been fun for me. I hope it has been fun for you, and that you learned something and you can identify trees in your own backyard now. We really miss you here at Camp McDowell. Thank you so much for just continuing to support us, and we hope that we are doing the same for you.